Hey everyone, my name's Autumn. I'm an artist living outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and I primarily work with watercolors. I have been working with Peerless Watercolors for quite some time now. I love them so much. In fact, I have my own palette with them and my own signature color, which is called Autumn's Indigo. We decided to do a two-part tutorial. The first part is already up on my channel, which the link will be in the description. We did this painting here. I talked about the basics of doing a negative shape painting, which is what this is. In this part, I decided I wanted to kind of step up the tutorial and maybe do something a little bit more advanced. So this is very beginner friendly, but this one here is what we're going to be doing, this water painting. It's a little bit more complicated. Your eyes will definitely cross after looking at it for a little while. So make sure you do the first exercise and then come back when you're feeling a little bit more comfortable and confident in your skills. I had so many people wondering how I did this, and it's a lot more simple than you would think. It just takes a lot of time and patience, and then the results are really cool. So we're gonna do that. I already went over the materials that we needed in the last part, but I'll run through them again really quick, and then we'll jump into the tutorial. Okay, so you're gonna need just a couple things. The first is obviously paint. I'm going to be using Peerless Watercolors, and I'm going to probably stick with just my indigo color that I helped them create, but you can use whatever color you want. Even though this is technically a water painting, you can do like yellow, orange, pink, purple, green, whatever you want. It totally doesn't matter. So just pick a color you like and jump in. I'm going to probably just stick with the indigo, but there's a ton of blues in their range, so if you don't like indigo, then you can try something else. So that's that for paint. You're gonna need paper of some sort. This sketchbook is one that I've made, and the link will be in the description to one similar to it, but you can use any sketchbook that has watercolor paper, or you can just use loose sheets. That's totally fine. I think that's what I'm gonna be painting on for this, just because it's a little easier to film than this big clunky sketchbook. You're also gonna need a cup of water, a palette to mix washes, a pencil, paper towels, and two brushes, one that's a little bit larger and one that is smaller. This one is from Jackson's Art. It's the Raven line, and then this one is from Winsor & Newton. It's a pointed round. It's really jank, but it doesn't matter as long as you can get fine details of it, then that is good to go. So that is it. I'm gonna set up so that we can start painting this, and I will get back to you. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is make a guideline to where the water is going to be. Just like in the last tutorial, you want the lightest color, the first layers, to be the things that are closest to you, and then the darkest ones are the ones that are furthest away. So this water painting is kind of like if you were looking at it from bird's eye view, if you're looking at like maybe a pool or like the waves crashing in. So the lightest parts are going to be kind of like the parts that are hitting the most sun, maybe even some like in waves you have the white caps, that kind of thing. So I'm going to just make some scribbles of where I want the lightest part to be. If when you're painting you go outside of where your lines are, it totally doesn't matter. You can erase them later if you draw light enough, so please be sure to draw as lightly as you possibly can. So I think I'm not gonna do anything too big just because we're practicing, but maybe I'll have this area here be all white. And I want maybe like a big cluster of white somewhere in here. And now I want a lot of these shapes to be round and kind of like amoeba-like, very blobby. Yeah, there's no real rhyme or reason, and a lot of this is going to change when we go in and paint it, but yeah, I'm just going to draw in some little bubbly shapes. Okay, something like that. That looks crazy. That doesn't look like anything, but that's okay. We'll get there. So the first thing I want to do is make a like incredibly light wash. This is going to be lighter than even the one we did in the first painting. So I'm going to be using mostly water on my palette with just a little bit of the paint. And I'm going to go over everything. Okay, I'm gonna let this dry and then we'll come back for the next layer. Okay, so the next layer we're gonna do is going to take a long time. Essentially with this painting, there's only 3 or 4 layers. So I'm going to make a big wash. You wanna make a lot of this color because it's, you know, you're gonna have to use it for a long time. It's a lot easier to mix more than you need than have to try to match the exact shade later on. So this is going to be like a mid-tone. You don't want it too light, you don't want it too dark, just somewhere in the middle. Okay, now once I have that, I'm going to start filling in these pebble-like, you know, blobby shapes. All of the white points, the lightest color, you want it to be kind of connected and thin. You want it to be irregular. You want it to kind of look like you didn't think too much about it, which is really hard to do. Okay, so I'm gonna start. I know that I want one area to be a lot thicker, like I want a thicker white part, just kind of like I have right here. So let's see. I think that'll be this area that I did here. And I'm kind of just like pushing my brush around to get that irregular shape. Something like that. Now I want to fill in this area, being mindful of where those circular shapes are going to be. Okay, so a random kind of filled in bluish area. There's some dots of white that I missed. It's hard to see from this angle. Okay. So to make these thin lines, what you want to do is then paint inside the blobby shape too, but leave a tiny little area. Now, if you need your smaller brush, go ahead and do it. Essentially, you're painting inside the shape too. You want some areas to be a lot thinner, some to be a lot thicker. doesn't have to be completely around the shape, the white part either. You can connect the blue, like cut off some of that white, that's totally fine. You know, whatever you want to do. You just really don't want it to be too uniform, or else it'll, you know, not look as, not realistic, but it won't necessarily look like water. Not that even this is super accurate. It's more of like the feeling of water, but. All right, so we got something like that. I'm gonna do the same here. Maybe thin this out a lot. Maybe make it not so round on this side. I think I'm gonna make a pointed one come up here to kind of split this in half a little bit. Make it as thin as I possibly can. I'm gonna add a little bit more up here, I think. So while you're doing this, you're gonna be like, this looks like nothing, it looks terrible, like what the heck am I even doing? And you just have to keep with it, you know? It'll really come together when you do the last layer, and paintings go through ugly stages anyways, so don't worry if you're feeling like it looks like nothing. Okay. Now I want to make some white areas that are thicker, so maybe I'll follow this shape that I made up here when I drew it in. Okay, sorry about the jump, my phone was full. Okay, so anyways, I was talking about making some of these white shapes thicker, and maybe not so much as like just outlines, so maybe something like this. I think with this white area, I want to fill in a little spot. Actually, let's work on this first shape that we did. So I'm going to make the majority of that part white. So I'm going to essentially make the other side of the white area. And then start filling that in. You can make small little circles in there too to break up any of the areas you think are maybe too white. I have a lot of thick lines in this area, so I want to make a few that are thinner just to give it some variation. Essentially, you're just going to fill in this whole painting this way. There isn't much thought or anything. You just kind of do it so it's not so uniform. You want things to look kind of well, natural, but mostly just having a lot of variation in lines and shape. Like, you want it to be, you don't want to do like a whole bunch of perfect circles. And I know this looks weird. This doesn't look like anything. So when your painting gets to this stage and you're feeling really discouraged, don't, just keep at it and it'll be a-okay. Okay, so I'm getting to the point where I'm pretty happy. I'm not going to fill the entire paper. I feel like it would be just like literally nuts. It would take way too long. But this area, like I said before, I wanted maybe this to be more white. I'm going to break up this. I'm kind of thinking of it as like a shoreline. But, totally whatever you want to do is fine. But I want to just break this up so that some of the blue comes up in here too. Okay, I feel this area has a lot of thick lines, so I'm gonna add something little in here to thin up the white. Maybe add just like another over here. Oops. Okay. Now I'm going to soak up some of this big pooling paint so it dries more evenly and quicker. Okay, so now I'm gonna dry this and then we will move on to the next layer. Okay, so essentially we just have 2 layers left to do. One would be the really, really dark thin lines, and then the other one would be kind of like a lighter layer that goes on top of the high points, the white, the lightest layer we already have. So I'm gonna start with that one, with the light one, because that's really simple and it's really quick. So I'm taking a very light wash and I'm just going to add some small shapes in the white area, kind of random, just to give it some variation so it doesn't look all just like one flat color. Maybe even act as like a shadow. And I'm doing this in the biggest areas so that it kind of breaks that up. Okay, something like that. I'm gonna dry that and then we'll go to the last layer. Okay, now we're ready ready for the darkest layer. As you can see up here, the darkest layer is pretty much just tiny little lines. And when you look at your piece, you're gonna find that the majority of your splotches, weird shapes go in one direction. I feel like the movement of this piece typically is going up this way. So when I go to do the dark layer, I want my shapes to kind of be going the opposite direction. So that way it adds even more contrast and it makes it feel like the whole thing is moving. So essentially you want a really dark wash. So I'm adding a lot of pigment into my palette where there's a lot of water. I'm using my small brush and we're just going to start making lines. So we're still doing negative shapes, so we're actually drawing around circles. So as you can see with this here, the lighter color is the circle, and I just drew a dark line around it to kind of push that shape forward. So it's easier in places with less little white parts. So I'm gonna maybe make one here just to show you how it works, and then we'll go ahead and fill out the rest of it. So I said the motion of this piece is kind of going in this diagonal direction, so maybe I'll have it more up and down. So I'll just start making the shapes, and you want to make sure not to paint over the white areas because those are above the dark areas. Those are the things in the foreground. So there's that. And again, you want variation, so you want some of your lines to be thicker, some to be thinner. So I'm going to just, and you want them all to be connected. So I'm gonna just, off of this one, go ahead and make another shape, thickening some areas and keeping some really thin. And you want to make sure some of these shapes are really long, some are really short. See how this white line here is really thin? I decided I want to put a thick line of this dark indigo next to it just to make it, you know, seem more varied. I'm going to make a really thick dark line here, since there's a lot of that mid-tone blue in this area. Now you can also make tiny circles within that, so I'll just make tiny dots in here to break up some of the darkness. Like that. Can make some areas pointed, some more round. The biggest piece of advice I have is to not necessarily look at the white part, to kind of try to ignore it, because there's so many tiny lines and different shapes, and it can get really, really confusing if you're looking at everything. So just, I'm focusing on, okay, sorry about that cut again. I ran out of space on my phone. But what I was saying is that I'm focusing on the mid-tone that we just did. Those shapes are a lot easier for my eyes to focus on than the tiny little white lines. So maybe that'll help you when you're doing this part. I'm just gonna continue making shapes throughout the whole thing. There's not much left for me to tell you how to do. It's honestly just kind of like you gotta put the time in, and then if you do, you'll get it. You'll get the outcome you're looking for. And that's it. So you can get really complicated with it. You can do a lot of tiny circles, you could do a lot of big ones, whatever you want to do. I hope you learned a lot in this 2-part tutorial series. I had a lot of fun making it. Peerless is one of my favorite small companies. They really care about the product that they're making, and it's just so cool to be able to use an art supply that has been around for so long. I hope you are encouraged to try this way of painting out. I hope you're encouraged to try Peerless Watercolors. It's a lot of fun, especially with everything that's going on in the world. Sometimes we need just like a fun, low-key way to relax, but also get something beautiful in the end. I hope you loved learning with me, and I also would encourage you to share your creations on Instagram with me. My handle is artchiu, ARTCHIU. I would love to talk to you. I would love to see what you made. Don't forget to subscribe to both my channel and Peerless's channel, and follow them on Instagram for more information and product pictures. So thank you so much for joining. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.